Hi, I'm Ashley Hamilton, and today we'll be describing the economic concepts of supply and demand. So, demand is defined as the number of units that a household will buy at a given time, and supply is the number of units that a firm is willing to produce in a given time. Households are defined as consuming units in an economy, and a firm is an organization that transfers units into
I'm Omar
products.
Ruth, and I'm gonna be discussing markets for y'all. Okay, so the first market we're gonna speak on is product and output market, which is basically a market that works with goods and services when they're exchanged. Next market is inputs and factor markets. These markets in which resources are used to produce goods and services are exchanged. All right, makes sense. All right, good. Labor markets are next, and that's when households supply work in exchange for wages and fees. We got capital markets, which is an input factor market in which households supply savings and firms demanding funds. All right, then we got land market, which is households supply land in exchange for rent. So, it's like big cities have that a lot, And then finally, we got factors of production, which is inputs in production, land, labor, and capital. That's it.
My name is Harold. I'm going to be talking about the relationship between supply and demand because that's a very important concept in economics that has to be understood and built upon. So the quantity supplied for a good or service is obviously the number of goods that a producer can provide in a given period, and the quantity demanded is the number of goods or services that a consumer would purchase if they could purchase all that they wanted in that same period of time. So the relationship between the two is usually demonstrated with a graph, with the vertical axis being the price unit, dollars, or for whatever economy that nation's form of currency, but for the U.S., the dollar, and the horizontal axis being the quantity of that good or service. And typically, uh, the demand curve is always going to be downward sloping because it'll be a downward sloping line because the more that is acquired of a good or service, the less somebody is willing to pay for it. Meanwhile, the supply curve is always upward sloping because the higher the price that a good or service can be sold for, the more that the supplier will want to sell it for. So this way you have two crossing curves, and they intersect at some point. The point that they intersect at is called equilibrium, the optimum point for an economy to flourish, and that's what's aimed for.